On the shale gas issue, President Bouteflika has sent a letter to the people of the south, urging them to remain hand in hand and work together to calm down the situation. Today, March 19th, marks the annual anniversary of Algeria's Victory Day, celebrating the historic end of the Evian Accords and the triumph of Algerian diplomacy. Yemen's President Hadi Mansour has been forced to flee his presidential palace after 2 fighter planes targeted his residence in the southern city of Aden. Those were today's top stories. Thanks for joining us live on DZAIR News Channel. In response to the growing tensions in the southern Salah region over shale gas exploitation, the head of state, Abdelaziz Bouteflika, sent a letter to the people of the south, urging them to remain hand in hand and work together to calm down the situation. President Bouteflika further added that the safety of the residents is crucial to the government, while stating that some political parties are using the shale gas file to serve their own interests, while urging the local populations of the south to avoid being used or manipulated by some ill-advised political circles over this vexed issue. Moving on to another matter, and today, March 19th, marks the annual anniversary of Algeria's Victory Day, celebrating the historic end of the Evian Accords and the triumph of Algerian diplomacy, then spearheaded by the Algerian National Liberation Front. This historic date serves as a vivid reminder of the lofty sacrifices made by the glorious November Revolution martyrs who laid down their lives for the sake of our freedom and independence. Lamia Shush illustrates.
The 19th of March 1962 marks the Algerian Victory Day following the long and difficult Evian Accords. This is considered one of the most significant dates in Algerian history because of the sacrifices and heroism it entailed. The Evian Accords consisted of 93 pages of detailed agreements and arrangements after much back and forth between the Algerian side, led by the National Liberation Front, and the French colonizer with an armada of negotiators. But the recognition of full sovereignty and the right to self-determination in Algeria was non-negotiable. After the failure of the first Evian negotiation round near the Swiss borders, the second historic round was held upon the request of the two major Algerian leaders, Karim Belkacem and Lakhdar Bantoubal. This date serves as a reminder for young Algerians of what the diplomacy of Algeria's courageous, intelligent, and determined men achieved. Men who took on the difficult challenge of liberating a country whose identity was in the process of being stripped for far too long, and whose pride and honor were too sacred to succumb or capitulate to a barbaric colonizer. Long-winded negotiations were held with an invader who did not think that a day like this would see the light. But the revolution of the November men proved it wrong, and their efforts were crowned on March the 19th, 1962, to pave the way for a new era of independent Algeria.
And now in the burning education file, more than 8 million pupils go into spring holidays starting from today and which will last 15 days, while in other educational institutes not affected by the current work stoppage, quarter courses transcripts will be handed over. The fate of these students is at stake after their normal studies have been paralyzed for a period that exceeded 5 weeks owing to the teachers' open-ended strike.
More than 8 million pupils go into spring holidays starting from today, and which will last 15 days, while in other institutions not touched by the strike, quarter transcripts will be handed. The fate of these students is at stake after their studies have been paralyzed for a period that goes beyond 5 weeks. The decision of the Knappest Union to go on in their open-ended strike after the 5th of April until their demands have been met came again to the surface, while the Minister of Education Nouria Ben Gabrit refused to hold another meeting to discuss their demands seriously. For his part, the Prime Minister has at last vowed to intervene to end this crisis, which packed the education sector to the very bone. The Prime Minister stated that he would look into the subject carefully and try to reach a compromise to satisfy the disputed sides after the Minister of Education failed to execute his wishes to solve the matter through dialogue. The coming days shall say which promises will be kept: the guarantees of higher governmental ranks to intervene, or the vows of the Knappest Union to carry on their open-ended strike. Either ways, the students' fate is still going to be on hold.
The province of Algiers is endowed with a lot of beautiful and amazing places, notably green spaces, where hundreds of Algerians go to escape the stressful life. But unfortunately, these green spaces are often neglected and no entertainment activities are provided there, along with security measures that should be reinforced to guarantee the safety of the incoming visitors.
The city of Algiers has many green spaces such as Bouchaoui, Bainaim or Rigaya. They can be an alternative for its citizens to escape the stress of their daily life. We have really beautiful and secured places. The only thing that is missing is restaurants, and the relevant authorities should take into consideration that we have wonderful places, so they need to take care of them. The lack of entertainment spaces for kids and the unavailability of security during the week remains the only concern for the visitors. We don't have entertainment for kids. We only have spaces to rest and nothing else. Concerning security, law enforcement is only here on Fridays and Saturdays. According to the governor of Algiers, Ammar Zough, the relevant authorities are willing to modernize green spaces and provide them with all necessary means. We have 24 urban forests in Algiers that we will provide with entertainment spaces. Algeria has really staggering green places, but unfortunately, they need more attention from the relevant authorities, as they are almost abandoned and not given much attention.
Outside the official celebrations of the national event of Victory Day, our destination was the borders of Batna and Msila, eastern Algeria, to look for Algerian freedom fighter Mrs. Zakia Merini, one of the first-generation freedom fighters of the glorious November Liberation War. She was part of the battalion of the departed revolutionary figure Ali Kafi. This brave woman lives in a humble hut where she emotionally recounts her revolutionary feats.
Far away from the official celebrations of the occasion of Victory Day, our destination was the borders of Batna and Msila provinces to look for the freedom fighter Zakia Merini, one of the first generations of the glorious Liberation War. She was in the battalion of the departed Ali Kafi. This superb woman lives in this humble hut where she recounts her adventure. I'm a freedom fighter and had a long experience helping around, and I had reached even the borders of Tunisia on foot. I know Ali Kafi, I know Rabah Bitat, Ammar Bouawda. We fought together. Finding Zakia Merini wasn't arduous, for all the people of Led Daraj know her and her adventures. She's very humble and in love with the countryside, to which she accepts no alternative. There is nowhere for me to go. I'll stay here until God Almighty bestows upon me deliverance. Now, with the departure of her children and grandchildren, she draws her routine like this every day between her hut and its patio, as if she got really sick and tired of the promises of the officials to better her situation by at least opening an alley from her hut to the paved road, which is distant by less than 1 kilometer. We have fought to live and let our children become independent. Now I'm not living. They didn't even give me a decent house. They are giving me few coins. That money is no longer sufficient, especially that one has grown so old. With so many memories from the liberation war, this woman still lives in bitter conditions. Yet, and even when she's checking out her old injuries, she says that this is the cheapest price you would offer for your liberation and freedom.
Moving on to our international news. The next round of the UN-brokered inter-Libyan peace talks resumed in Rabat, Morocco, in another attempt from the international community to solve the complicated crisis. Meanwhile, President Abdelaziz Bouteflika, in his letter today, called on the Libyans to preserve the country's territorial integrity and to fight the plague of terrorism.
A new round of UN-sponsored Libya dialogue began today in Rabat, Morocco, which is a decisive landmark in the path towards attempting to end the crisis ravaging the neighboring country. The situation in Libya has been deemed dangerous at all levels, whether it be political, economic, as well as security, since the toppling of former leader Muammar Gaddafi in what has been widely dubbed the Arab Spring. Feuding Libyan parties have instituted a ceasefire to discuss an amiable outcome on the way forward, while the UN Special Envoy to Libya, Bernardino Leon, called on all the parties to refrain from all military escalation and instead focus on combating a common enemy infiltrating the country, the so-called ISIS. Algeria, in its diplomatic proposal to bring the factions together, has come a long way to bridge the gap between them. And President Bouteflika, in his letter today, called on Libyans to trust Algeria as a mediator to reach a peaceful solution to their crisis and to preserve their country's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Now, all eyes are on Morocco, where the international community is once again trying to solve this complicated crisis through diplomatic means and convince the factions to create a unity government able to face up to the danger lurking in the dark, awaiting to tear Libya apart, then spread its evil into the region.
In the neighboring Tunisia, the horrific attacks on Tunisia's Bardo Museum have left 19 dead and many more injured. Gunmen clothed in military garb stormed the premises on Wednesday afternoon and held hostage for a number of hours before opening fire. Maher Mizahi has the full story.
Gunmen in military fatigue stormed the Bardo Museum in downtown Tunis on Wednesday afternoon, killing 19 visitors of various backgrounds. 17 foreign tourists and 2 Tunisians, as well as the 2 gunmen, were among the casualties in the North African nation. The dead include 3 Japanese, 4 Italians, 2 Colombians, 2 Spaniards, an Australian, a Pole, and a French national. Other reports claim that an unknown number of South African nationals were also killed. Newly elected President Beji Qaid Sibsi said,
أريد أن يفهم الشعب التونسي.
I'd like the Tunisian people to understand, once and for all, that we're in a war against terrorists, and these barbaric minorities do not scare us, and we will fight them mercilessly until our last breath.
Tunisia is the country that has best transitioned to a successful democracy since the Arab Spring, hosting 2 free and fair elections. But this attack will mar their tourism sector, which is one of the country's foremost revenue generators. Tunisians took to the streets after the attacks to show their solidarity with the victims and their outrage to the senseless acts. In a letter addressed to our fraternal neighbors, the president of the Algerian Republic, Abdelaziz Bouteflika, stated, "In the face of this tragic ordeal that has hit our Tunisian brothers, I would like to present to the Tunisian government, on behalf of the Algerian government, our sincere condolences. I would also like to express my firm condemnation of this criminal act which contradicts the values and principles of our region." Algeria's solidarity and experience in combating terrorism will undoubtedly be of much use to this new Tunisian government in relation to this recent challenge.
As previously mentioned in the headline, Yemen's president has been forced to flee his presidential palace after 2 fighter planes targeted his residence in Aden. The president was swiftly evacuated on Thursday after the attacking planes opened fire, hitting his residence in the southern city of Yemen.
Yemen's president has been forced to flee his presidential palace after 2 fighter planes targeted his residence in Aden, a government official has said. President Abdrabbu Mansour Hadi was evacuated on Thursday after the planes opened fire, hitting his residence in the southern city. The aircraft dropped a bomb or fired a missile at the compound in El Mashik district of the southern port city, where Hadi is based, in a sharp escalation of Yemen's months-long armed turmoil. Residents said anti-aircraft guns opened fire at the planes, and smoke was seen rising from the area, but it was not immediately clear if Hadi was in the compound. A Yemeni security source said the situation at the presidential palace was under control and there was nothing to be worried about. The attack on Hadi's compound came after forces loyal to Yemen's former president forced the closure of Aden's international airport after clashes left at least 4 people dead and 13 wounded, security sources said. A special forces unit led by renegade General Abdelhafiz al-Saqaf stormed the airport grounds on Thursday before being repelled by fighters linked to the current president Abdrabbu Mansour Hadi. During the hours-long fighting, more than 100 passengers who had boarded a Yemeni aircraft flight to Cairo were ordered off a plane as a machine gun fire rang out and explosions shook the terminal building. At least 2 shells hit the airport's ground, security and aviation officials at the scene said, with at least 4 people killed and 13 wounded. Another 10 others were captured. Tensions have been building in Aden for days. Hadi loyalists dominate the city, but 2 army units are loyal to Saqaf, a pro-Salah commander, who leads a force of 3,000 Special Forces police. Hadi unsuccessfully tried to remove al-Saqaf from his post earlier this month, prompting some clashes. Hadi insists he remains the country's legitimate leader and enjoys much support in Aden, where he has been based since fleeing house arrest in Sana'a last month.
Way back now to topical local news. The International Auto Show kicked off yesterday for 10 days at the Safex Exhibition Hall on the eastern outskirts of Algiers. Many car dealers are participating in this major event, hoping to attract as many customers as they can by displaying enticing discounts on the current and even brand new models.
The International Auto Show kicked off yesterday for its 80th edition until the 28th of March. As usual, car dealers have 10 days to present their new models that will be released in the Algerian market and at the same time attract customers by offering interesting discounts on the current cars already available. Thousands of people came the first and second day to visit the show and discover new models. According to them, they were satisfied by the organization of the event, but some of the visitors were astounded by car prices, though car dealers have offered discounts for this occasion. The prices are expensive. I came here to visit and maybe buy a car, but as I said, it's really not affordable. But this is not the case for everybody, as other visitors have expressed different opinion. The event is well organized. There are more new models displayed compared to the last year. One thing that I like also is the discounts offered by car dealers. The auto show will continue until the 28th of the current month, and visitors are looking forward to seeing new models and take advantage of the discounts, whereas car manufacturers are trying to attract potential buyers by giving them facilities, such as immediate availability of the car and many other surprises that awaits them during the auto show.
A word about sports now. The First League Algerian team of Naht Hossein Day continue preparation for the upcoming derby match versus USM Algiers in anticipation of the 23rd match stage of the Mobilis Professional National Football League. The club's training session unfolded in an enthusiastic atmosphere under the watchful eye of manager Mziane Ril, who put the final touches to his team's lineup before the match-awaited confrontation. The players refused to accept defeat, as dropping points would mean the historic Algiers club would enter the relegation zone of the championship's rankings. And with this, we come to the end of our news in English, brought to you from DZAIR News Channel. Thank you for stopping by.